listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
That's it, man. We're here with Tennyson. Right. Thank you so much. We haven't done a Zoom episode of the podcast or a virtual episode of the podcast, I guess, in years. I don't even remember the last one we did.
And that was audio only.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we did a bunch back in the day, and then, I don't know, we just got away from them. They were a hassle, I think, prior to 2020, but then everybody kind of got squared away in 2020 and figured out the whole virtual online thing, so it's a little bit easier now.
Yeah, so I share your preference in the in-person way of doing anything. And like you were saying in the email, a lot easier to facilitate a sense of connection and all the rest. So
it's all good,
next
though.
time, I guess. Yeah.
So we're excited to chat with you. I don't even remember how we found your company. It was on Instagram, but I don't remember how I came up, where it popped up or how we found it or anything like that. But immediately we were super interested in it. We're both very heavily into mushrooms kind of across the spectrum as far as what they offer and how they are used. So this was something that was super exciting. Do you want to give everybody, first off, it's Magic Mogu, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I want to know all about kind of the journey and the exploration into creating this whole thing. But before we get to that, let's learn a little bit about you. Are you born and raised here in Utah?
Yeah, I was born in Provo, grew up in what we used to call the triple bubble of Mormonism, where, Highland, a little bit north of Provo, in Utah County, Utah. It's the least diverse city in the U.S., highest concentration of that particular religion. And I love it here. It took me moving and escaping out to the Caribbean to realize that I prefer being in Utah to anywhere else in the world so far. But, it's the way it goes, I guess. So born and raised, I've lived abroad a little bit. I spent a couple years in Peru doing the missionary thing, and I've spent a little time out east in Pennsylvania, but yeah, mostly Utah.
When you say the missionary thing, was it an LDS mission?
Yep. Yeah.
Did you grow up Mormon?
Yeah, I did.
Are you still practicing?
I am definitely not. So that's been, I think, shortly after I got home from Peru, I decided to explore other corners of life and have not stopped pushing into the darkness, so to speak. The metaphorical darkness being a positive thing of the mystery of life.
Are you cool if we go into the Mormon thing for a bit?
Yeah, sure.
It's one of those things that we both have kind of, I guess, explored in our own personal story. We both were born and raised here in Utah. We were both brought up in the church to some extent. Stephanie was far less. I was baptized, super small town, so like the whole 9 yards with the church and the community and everything like that. And then Steph was a little bit less than that. You were baptized though, right? Mm-hmm. Either way, we were definitely indoctrinated into the culture of Mormonism, obviously being born and raised here in Utah.
Yeah, you don't have to go to church to be in Utah to have it completely wrapped around you and holding you down.
Yeah, inescapable.
Yeah.
Especially down there in Utah County.
Mm-hmm.
So
totally.
Were you, like growing up, was it the whole 9 yards, or were you kind of like the standard Jack Mormon, or what was the...
I would like to say that I was like 8.5 yards. I had a really positive experience with it, and so did everybody around me. So there wasn't a lot of incongruency with the idea of participating in that kind of communal and cultural identity. And there wasn't, you could say, like the contrast of incongruent experiences or information to create any sense of dissonance. And so it was pretty easy to be a part of it and feel great and sincere and earnest about it all, and feel relatively rewarded for that earnestness, until getting all the way out to Peru and, you know, seeing what it's like outside of, again, that triple bubble of insulated, you could almost say, control as a byproduct of everyone there being Mormon, and, you know, for the entirety of the history of those cities, more or less. And so, yeah, like, it's almost like, what I guess I mean to say by this is that it's a yes to the whole 9 yards thing, but almost as a byproduct of that being so much the easiest thing to do on every level. And so there was rarely, if ever, a thought of anything else until other options were presented. And then it was a very quick kind of, oh, okay, yeah, let's get out of this.
What, you said Peru was the big change for you? Like, explain a mission to people that don't understand what the heck a mission is.
Yeah. So the mission is, the mission, well, to go on a mission, as the service is called, or the 2 years of service, you are kind of, quote, ordained by the authority of God as claimed by the church to go and tell people what they're supposed to know about how to connect to God in this life and guarantee a permanent residential connection to him in the alleged next. And so you spend 2 years dedicating 100% of your time, finances, and energy to pretty much 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, knocking on doors, calling people, whatever methods you come up with to be able to sit down with people and explain to them your beliefs that you believe they should also adopt, so that they can be incorporated into the system of Mormonism. And so what that looks like in Peru, and more or less in any area where they'll kind of be set up to do this, is that you have a companion. Every morning you wake up at a set time, you study scriptures for 2 hours, you spend the rest of the day contacting people, teaching lessons, knocking on doors, etc., until about 8 o'clock at night, and then you're in bed, and that's all you do for 2 years. And so it's all volunteer work. You learn a lot about human thinking and behavior and differences in lifestyle and culture, if you're paying attention, I suppose. And it's generally an overwhelmingly positive experience in the sense of what one can gain and grow from it, regardless of, you know, how their life or what direction their life goes prior to completing the term of service. After which, you know, you're back to being a normal person. You're not a clergy member or anything. Whereas during, you're not supposed to use a phone, look at the internet, touch women, except if you're shaking their hand, listen to music, anything. So that's kind of the gist of it.
Wow. I didn't know it was that deep.
It is intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is perfect for me, was because I was able to go and do this hugely difficult thing that was a total sacrifice of everything in my life at the drop of a hat. There's no period of transition, really. And my assumption was that should I do this great thing, I could get this, you know, answer from God that is kind of central to the Mormon doctrine that you will receive, and you'll know that it's the right thing to do. And I never really had that happen. But again, I was so inundated with the rightness of it all that I just assumed it would, should I go and do this grand gesture of faith. And I killed it the whole way. I did amazing. I was the top guy, got home, and just realized that nothing had ever happened to confirm that any of it was valid. And that's when kind of the door opened for the reality of the inconsistencies in it that I had been in some way aware of most of my life, to kind of present their case to my conscious mind. And then from that point, it was a pretty easy and kind of nice transition away.
Did you have, was it difficult, like with family and things like that? Was your family still, involved? Or?
It was almost hilariously easy, because I didn't know this, but while I was gone, most of my family, including my parents, were all kind of independently and secretly of each other in their own process of leaving. And so I got home not knowing that most of my family had left, and we were all kind of keeping up pretenses with each other. And then I think within 2 years of my return, and eventually there were all of these moments of like, wait, you too? Oh. So, and now of the 10 of us, only one is still a Mormon at all, or a member of the LDS Church. And it's funny, because honestly, I think he should stay. It's right for him, and he does it right, and it's great. And so, or if he chooses to leave, that's what he should do. But he's doing it in a way that I, ironically enough, agree with. So.
Did you say 10 siblings? Like 10 kids?
I have 7 siblings, 10 people total in the
Okay.
family. Yeah. 2 adults, 8 grown kids.
Where do you fall in that line?
I'm number 3.
I can't even imagine 10 or 8. I mean, that's just so many. We have 4 kids. So there's 6 of us.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
that's plenty.
no, we're done. We're at the tail end of it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All your kids are going to thank you for that.
Yes.
4 is a good number. It's kind of like we almost have 2 sets of kids in my family, the older 4 and the younger 4. And it's been tough to get there to be like a crossing over. Now that we're all grown up, it's a lot easier. But
that's a lot.
There's a number. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it was so easy for you, and like a nice transition. I've never heard anyone describe leaving the church and like having the doors open as a nice or easy transition. It's always been. Yeah.
Well, it was funny. There was this big pile of cash sitting on my desk in late tithing offerings that each month you're supposed to give 10% of your income, for anyone who doesn't know. And I kept forgetting to bring it. And after like 8 months, all this money was sitting on my desk. And so it was like this big cash reward for me. That when I kind of had my click moment of this isn't for me, I immediately got, this great, very clear confirmation, you could say, from the universe that it was a good decision. So yeah, you could say, I like to say that things being easy is a theme in my life that I put a lot of conscious intent towards, and have found to be a really helpful creative catalyst in anything I try to do.
I'm getting sparked with a ton of ideas. I got a lot of questions.
Ask her.
Cool. Yeah.
So you're mentioning some things about the universe. I guess it's an assumption that somebody that starts a brand based off of a mushroom health bar, that is some way, shape, or form going to have some level of consciousness. So it's just kind of assuming that you're spiritual in a sense, and I guess I shouldn't assume. Why don't you tell us, like, if you're not Mormon, then what are you? And even though we don't need it in a box or anything like that, but
yeah. To try to put words on the slippery subject of the ineffable. I guess what I am is, let's see, in a context of like belief about the nature of fundamental reality and our relationship with it as individuals. That be that's my way of describing that kind of context to preface whatever I would say about it, which I guess is that, let's see. I think it's a complicated question to answer because I've gone and sampled so many systems of investigation and description that I don't know that I would say that I align with anything other than that I know that I exist, and that existence has apparent qualities that can be let's see, how do I want to say this? This is a funny thing. I haven't been asked this before. Yeah, I guess I know that I exist and that existence is aware, and that nothing else can be known for sure, but anything is obviously accessible in the realm of what is possible. So, okay, I'll just say I like Zen. Zen Buddhism's great. or Advaita Vedanta out of the East, or Christian mysticism and agnosticism, or get really close, but they're really heavy with their metaphors. And I think that makes things less freeing to a consciousness that is so obviously unlimitedly free. And so I obviously dance around making any conclusions out of principle, and that principle being the unwillingness to restrict what seems to me to be obvious freedom. So maybe if you give me more specific questions, I can give you less.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. That question I asked was super specific, right? It was spot on. I knew exactly what I was trying to get at. So
we're nothing but direct. So.
The stark difference, I mean, everybody is so uniquely, individually different, right? And so it's not to say that there are, I mean, I think there's stereotypes and there's groups, right? And we kind of put everybody, in order to just literally like quantify what somebody is, we put them into this group or into this class or into this stereotype that we have. But then also the caveat is that literally each obviously individual is so intrinsically different. But even though I don't know what you were like growing up or anything like that, just based off of the fact that you born and raised in, Utah County and grew up LDS, went on your mission and everything like that, I have a bunch of stereotypes that I'm applying to you. And that's just based off of my life experience, right? Because I grew up, in a similar community and environment and everything like that. I didn't go on a mission. But anyways, what happened that led you from that to this? Because I always think about, I know it's not one thing, right? But that journey to go from almost in a sense like closed-minded and narrow-minded, but not in a closed-off way, just in the reality of where you're brought up, right? Yeah. To now this big, expansive opening and willingness to look at possibilities, as well as like, I liked the way that you phrased a lot of things, as well as like not limiting freedom, the fact that, so what happened?
Well, I think my childhood lends greatly to what happened and the ease with which it did, because though I was kind of conditioned through a limited worldview, that worldview has enough open windows to future possibility. The whole, really the big key here being for Mormons is that you get to be God one day. And so there's like this exquisite light at the end of the tunnel that very few other systems potentiate. And so with that, there was a lot of what felt like permissible fantasizing about the infinite nature of the way things are, and kind of an underlying assumption that science will always eventually catch up to these fundamental kind of spiritual claims about the way things are. And so I always had this great interest in finding these parallels and theorizing and thinking about what may be the way it is. And I unknowingly kind of touched on and held on to a lot of theories about how things, probably were, that God's not going to tell us till it's all over. And there was all this stuff, and I felt safe, or in the sense that I wasn't being blasphemous in believing that these things may be the case, because I wasn't using any of those ideas in opposition to what I was being taught. And so when I let go of the restrictions of what I had been taught, and was able to kind of, in that sense, see and perceive in a maybe less distorted way, those other ideas were able to kind of all the way sort of fill in the space that they had been attempting to occupy pretty easily. So, and that really doesn't actually speak to very much of how I want to answer your question. The main thing was that I took acid once and saw, what LSD can show you, and thought, okay, now I'm experiencing the undeniable reality of the complete and perfect interconnectedness of everything in a way that is both indescribable and doesn't have to be described, because it's always ever presently the case. And the implications of that, which have been talked about by most everybody throughout time that has really taken the time and effort to figure that out for themselves. Well, where was I going with that sentence? I forget. The point is, I did that, saw what I saw. I had the kind of preliminary ideas that I suppose I had intuitively chanced upon prior, and it all fit together really nicely. And so from that point forward is this very well validated sense of, again, kind of the freedom to explore the nature of life, which is whole in its lack of separation and boundless in its kind of freedom and infinity of possibility. And then, of course, the experiences and patterns and things we can learn from what is arising out of that right now. I don't know if that actually answers your question. But...
So acid.
Yeah, acid. There we go. Yeah, in one word. As Ram Dass said, LSD is the second coming of Christ, and I think that that really, in many ways, at least for many people, maybe not everybody, has a shining beacon of truth to it. And again, depending on how you interpret what any of that is supposed to mean.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I keep seeing like this moment, and you'll have to see if you can elaborate more on that.
Yeah.
It's like maybe it was like that moment with the acid and when you went in with the LSD, but it's like this immersion where you have all these things that you're allowed to think and the way that things are, and here you are, and then you step out, or like your head comes up through the surface, and now you have the freedom to think all of these, like everything is possible. You can just explore everywhere. What does that, like when you're looking at your child, not your child, but like your child's self, when you had this is your world, this is your world, and this is everything that you're allowed to think, and this is what you have to believe, and you just have to trust, and now it's endless. There's no limit to where you can go. How, just seeing that as an easy transition. I'm sorry, I'm getting lost for words here. Like what was that inside of you? Like when you had this from here's your world to here's your world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so it was kind of interesting because it was almost as if I, before kind of going into the upswing of that transition, there was a big dive down into a couple years of depression and tough times and certain tragedies that had happened. And then with this LSD breakthrough, it was like a complete shutdown, defrag, integration, and reboot of my system. And so coming out of it, it's like I had the momentum of all of that freedom, plus all of this, you could say, transmuted negative energy in the direction of, I can do anything that I want to do, and I can be whatever I feel like being moment to moment. And so it was sort of this, it's kind of funny that there's this stretch of exhilarating realization of possibility, and then this daunting mountain of time and effort and just, what it takes for transformation to occur post-realization of the possibility of transformation. And it's been this funny experience of ever since that moment, which I'm not sure that I'm really speaking to what you're asking, but I'm just going to kind of finish out what I'm saying, and you can help me correct course here. But ever since then, and this is about 8 years ago now, but it's been this kind of funny thing where I've noticed in retrospect that I have been kind of embodying and creating and then becoming disillusioned of and abandoning every idea that I've been given or had created in my head of what was sort of the end goal of what to do with life. And that looked like, a bunch of different things. One of those being moving to the Caribbean and living on the beach and kind of retiring, which turns out I did 70 years too early. I got way too bored being a retiree in the Caribbean. And I'm grateful that I got to learn that lesson so that I could come back to Utah and pursue other, you could say, activities that are more appropriate to my kind of current age and sense of vitality and ambition, without the angst of thinking that I need to do it to get to there. And so it's been like this process of disillusionment through achievement, which has been a fun balance between grasping towards what I want and letting go of what I have. And so kind of playing the simultaneous role of non-attachment to either gaining or losing. And so it's like the idea of being non-attached as well as unattached to non-attachment, and being more of a, I guess, ever developing in skillfulness or bandwidth conduit for kind of life to happen through me.
Okay. There's, like I said, there's so many things that jump out that I'm like, I want to ask you this. I want to talk about that. Earlier you mentioned time and just grappling with time. That's something that we talk about we talk about it all the time. But the concept and idea, at least from my perspective and kind of how I view time. Okay. I want to give you context so then I can ask you the question. It feels like twofold, almost like a little bit of both, right? Sometimes it feels very much a real thing, and it's linear in fashion, and I will die someday and whatever, right? Time is just this very linear thing that moves in this one direction. And then the other times it's non-existent at all, and it just literally doesn't exist. And so time is not just a construct, but it's something that doesn't exist. So then for us, everything becomes very much open and expansive. When you were talking earlier about Ram Dass and the LSD, Second Coming of Christ, I was thinking about Christ is such a integral role in like religion, obviously Christianity, or the Christ-like figure, right? It's always this very significant thing, and it plays a big role in our culture and in the world today. If you look at just the world as a whole, this is way off track. It's a big rabbit hole. But I was thinking about how it seems to be such like religion as a whole is still a big factor on this globe. And I think in my mind, it makes sense that it's because like what if we're connected to the same time frame that Christ is? So because it's not linear, he's alive, Buddha, whoever throughout all these different space and times are connected, and we just happen to be in the connection spot with those other universes. So that's why it's such an important integral thing, here. But then the reality is you just shift one universe over and it's not a big deal. Like religion, spirituality, the idea of something greater than us just doesn't exist. I don't think there's a question there, Tennyson.
Yeah.
But I guess what is it that, because time is so important to me, I think about it so much in regards to how endless it is, but also how I have to keep it simple in the moment, right? If I just sat around and thought about the non-expansiveness and time never existing and all those kind of things. So it does have to have some sort of role in my life. So how do you grapple with it? What's that struggle look like for you?
How do I grapple with time? Well, I noticed that I've never actually experienced time before. I've experienced a sense of what we call impatience, and I suppose we infer that impatience is related to the idea of time, and that comes up when I try to hold the paradox of wanting something that isn't present in my perception of experience. And so I can relieve myself of the suffering caused by time, so to speak, by either not thinking about it or recognizing that any thought I have about time is ultimately untrue because it very obviously can't exist. And at least obvious to me and the way that I look at and interpret things. And so it's kind of this funny thing where I don't grapple with it, because were I to do so, it would be an endless and impossible battle grappling to resolve something that can't be resolved because it's irrationally and or irrational and untrue and non-existent in the first place. And so it's kind of like grappling with my own conditioned concept of time and how it relates to me, which it doesn't because it's not there. And so when the response arises from me to interact with life under the context that there's time passing, you could say that my how I best serve myself in that moment is to let go of the idea, because it doesn't serve, because it doesn't actually relate to anything that's happening. Now, in a more practical sense, where we do obviously use hours and days and weeks, it reminds me of something I heard, I think on those like chill step mixes where they'll put in quotes from Alan Watts or Eckhart Tolle. There's one where Eckhart Tolle is included saying something like, it's to the effect that if you want to think about or consider something outside of the present moment, it isn't contrary to, his teaching about being in the now, which I don't agree with all of it, but he talks about that it still works within his doctrine, you could say, to think about the future if it's relevant to the present moment. And I always really liked that kind of way of resolving this totally unnecessary man-made paradox of how do I be present but also think about the future. which I laugh at because for my own reasons. But anyway, so the point being, that, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, if I'm thinking about time, it's because it's almost like I'm planting a seed in the present moment that will kind of percolate and become available at a later location in the progression of events, you could say, that, will serve me. A calendar. I'm putting a note on a calendar where I'll get an alert. I don't need to get all crazy with my words here, but and if I'm not doing that, I just generally refuse to think about time or anything, outside of the timeless moment that I exist in.
What if the purpose of time, even though it is this non-existent thing in the concept of the way we think about it, but what if the purpose of it is to create that struggle, and the struggle is the purpose, like the introspection and the grappling with time is the purpose of time, because that internal dialogue, even if it isn't necessarily a struggle, but that thing that we go through is the actual purpose. And that is the thing that is serving the higher and greater good of who we are, or humanity, or whatever.
Yeah. I feel like that's a way of describing what's happening that I wouldn't necessarily, well, I guess where I'm cautious in kind of agreeing with statements like that is I don't want to give something purpose when I don't know that it needs to be given purpose, because then I'm kind of holding myself under a paradigm that has certain implied assumptions that, again, and this is me kind of, I guess, admitting my form of spirituality again, it might compromise my sense of fluidity and freedom within how I kind of think and act and respond to life. And so to say that the concept of time has a purpose and that it creates a sense of struggle through which we grow, is that kind of what you were?
Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, okay.
I don't necessarily, I always have these random ideas, and if they sit with me well enough, then I'll hold on to them for a while. And, sometimes they turn into beliefs, but. Yeah.
I guess well, then I'll respond to that more broadly in that I don't know that I do hang on to ideas or beliefs about much of anything, which sounds kind of nihilistic. But I love to play in the game of curiosity about what might mean what, but I feel like the thing that I haven't been able to get past is that in an immediate and inescapable sense, nothing really means anything. And so there's like a temporary experience of meaning that's related to whatever it is that I'm doing, and the kind of bundle of other movements of energy and life and meaning and all the rest. And that comes and goes, and it seems to do so on its own and in a way that's always appropriate to what is needed by the moment I'm existing in.
Go ahead.
It's kind of a spin-off. It's something else. I don't know if you guys might have to redirect.
I think if we kept spinning into time, we would just
gonna keep going. There's so what I'm getting is this conflict within you. You have this set, and then you this life purpose, this path that you're on, and then you're following through with that. Everything shifts. You come back. Nothing is what it seems. Up is down. The possibilities are, unless you take off to the Caribbean, you escape. You're done. You need to be detached from everything. And in that detachment, like, who knows what happened in that space? Like, you think about going to the Caribbean and on the beach, and like, that sounds amazing. And you had that, and like you said, 7 years too soon. So you had this drive that pulls you back, and you are very focused on unattachment and having no attachments to anything, including not being attached to being unattached. But this drive in you is just going. You have this, like, even right now, it feels like you're being pulled in other directions. It feels like you're seeking, and you have these other random things in your space. So I guess my first question on that is, like, what are you seeking, or what will you allow yourself to seek?
Well, I think that the activity of seeking is kind of a quality of anything that exists. It's all born of a movement and will continue moving until it's gone. And so I would like to say that rather than me seeking something and having kind of, it's like seeking is happening. There are biological and psychological activities that occur for a purpose, or at least in a direction, and that it will eventually meet something that matches its own kind of energy, you could say, in a way that will resolve that activity. And so taking it into less abstract language, I'm in this moment, I notice that I'm seeking water because I feel thirst. And in a larger life context, I'm seeking success in business so that I can meet the needs of my circumstances. And I suppose what I mean to communicate with kind of this wavy answer is that one of the things that I continually am brought to the realization of, especially with this cool thing that I've experienced of disillusionment over and over and over again, which sounds like a negative experience to be disillusioned, but if you look at the word, it's the best thing that can happen to you. You're being freed from an illusion. The illusion that something over there is better than what you can have here. And ultimately, so I guess this lesson learned over and over again is that I truly can't reach a point that is any better than the point I'm at right now, regardless of the level of comfort or discomfort the accompanying experiences and sensations are in that moment. And so, again, to kind of circle back again and wrap this up, seeking seems to always be happening, and the reason always seems to be changing. And but I wouldn't say that I'm seeking anything. It's just the nature of existence for movements to occur and then resolve. And we give those labels like seeking and goals and all the rest. And there's, simultaneous to that, a sense of wholeness and stillness that all kind of occurs within, in a sense. So yes and no, and both and neither. I apologize, but I also thank you guys for the cool questions you're giving me that are bringing out these kind of hilarious to me answers where I'm going all over the place.
No, it's great,
Thank
man.
you. I'm sorry.
Let's get into mushrooms, because I want to, I just want to know everything. I want to know the journey into that space. So let's go. Because we've got our own experiences, but we talk about that stuff all the time. So I want to hear yours.
Yeah, well, so my involvement with fungi kind of began in the psychedelic sense pretty quickly after trying LSD. And from that point forward, I've had a lot of experiences with psychedelic mushrooms and kind of every variety of or flavor that people tend to do it, whether it's partying or in kind of ceremonial or therapeutic or different types of solo journeys or mixing it with other types of psychedelics and then that kind of being the huge motivation to get into becoming in a more holistic expression, kind of a healthier thing or person. And that obviously comes from doing very real and honest work on myself as an individual and my body and its health and all the rest. And so that over time led to about 3 years ago, getting pretty heavily involved in functional mushrooms. My first experience with it was replacing coffee with cordyceps, which was magic. I had a roommate at the time who told me that he had all these functional mushrooms for different reasons and that if I ever needed them, I could try them out. And so one evening I needed an upper and I didn't want coffee because I had become kind of acutely aware of the inflammatory effects and obviously didn't want caffeine that late in the evening. And so I tried the cordyceps, was brought online like nothing I had ever felt before. It's an experience that's totally unique to any other stimulant I've ever had. And then, from that point forward, I tried everything. And I was lucky in that the functional mushrooms that I was exposed to from the very beginning were the ones grown by Jamie Bonfiglio at Wholesome Wellness, which is by far and beyond, and untouchably so, the global standard in quality for medicinal mushrooms when it comes to sourcing, growing, extraction. They have patented extraction processes. They're the best. She worked with Paul Stamets for a long time, left his company, hugely dissatisfied with the potential that they were knowingly not fulfilling in their growing practices for the efficacy and potency of their supplements. And so she has this really cool story of passion and frustration that drives her to create what will forever be the highest quality mushrooms on the planet, I would say.
What was her name again?
There are Jamie Bonfiglio. It's spelled JME. So the company is Wholesome Wellness. And so I was able to experience a therapeutic effect that you generally won't get from mushroom supplements. And this kind of leads into how I started the company Magic Mogu, and also kind of draws from this theme I mentioned earlier about how I like things to be easy. And I find that laziness is a wonderful partner to creativity in driving innovation that really serves in a way that I love. And so relating this all to my story with mushrooms, I don't like preparing supplements. I don't like the powders. I don't like that they don't mix well, that they usually don't taste good, that they don't absorb very well into your body if you're just having an isolate or eating a pill, and all of the rest of kind of the fiasco of the supplement and health food industry. And so I had this running list of everything that I'd put into a snack bar, should I ever make one, because I was also pretty annoyed at the options available to me in the stores and just packaged food in general. At this time, I was living somewhere that had a backyard that was a permaculture garden, and so I was getting most of my food from there. So I had this amazing sense of vitality from my diet and heightened sensitivity to what food does to me. So this all sort of coalesced into just taking all 8 of sort of the pillars of medicinal mushrooms that you can get, at least from Wholesome Wellness, and just starting to throw them into snack bar mixes with a bunch of other superfoods and supplements and cognition-oriented foods until I could get something that would hold together. I still to this day have not really looked into how to actually formulate a bar or a snack bar. I just took everything that I knew was right for my body, based off of a couple assumptions. One of those being that everything in the Mogu bars I make is stuff that you would find foraging on the forest floor. So I call it forest floor nutrition. It's this cool kind of juxtaposition with our biology is uniquely adapted to find and consume and assimilate roots, fungi, nuts, seeds, and berries. And those are also the foods that are the most nutritionally rich and potent and kind of performance enhancing for humans. And so it kind of seemed like a no-brainer to make just that thing that nature has continually refined and provided for us over millions of years to be how I package the mushrooms. And it also kind of enhances the body's capacity to absorb and distribute the bioactive compounds and the adaptogens, and then also have the micro and macronutrition to use or to kind of maximize your capacity to ride the wave of benefit that you get from the adaptogens. And so this is just a big story of self-awareness combined with laziness that led me to figuring out how to get mushrooms into my diet every day without learning to dislike them because of the inconvenience or the flavor. And I've used them for everything since in terms of health and performance. And it's been phenomenal.
I want to ask you, psilocybin specifically, do you feel like if you could quantify the benefit that you've gained from that, from using mushrooms in that way with, that intention and that purpose, what would be kind of the, like I said, just quantifying the benefit of psilocybin for you?
Mm-hmm. So psilocybin is kind of unique in the realm of psychedelics in that it's a poison that suppresses prefrontal cerebral activity. And so you could say that, I guess a kind of adequate nickname for the prefrontal cortex activity is your ego or your self-awareness and the dialogue that kind of initiates linguistically. What that kind of add-on controller component of our psychosomatic biology does is it allows for kind of a new level of regulation of the body's behaviors and decision making, which allows us to think abstractly and come up with concepts and evolve with as fast as thought instead of as fast as biology, which is obviously hugely beneficial to the species in its ability to survive and propagate. But then it creates all the problems it does, which we're all painfully aware of. And so one of those ongoing kind of chronic issues is that this ego character or prefrontal cortex activity will, out of kind of maladaptation, suppress certain activities in the body, especially emotional and energetic release and the expression that kind of accompanies that. You could say the expression or embodiment of intuition, which, these are all just words that we use to label natural processes of adaptation that our bodies are really good at using to deal with the circumstances of life, which the circumstances have changed so much and so rapidly that it's harder to recognize how things fit together. But the point I'm getting at with this is that if you have 6 hours of not just a subdued ego activity, but simultaneous to that, you have this generally blissful experience accompanying it. What's happening is that everything that's been suppressed into your subconscious and then kind of packed into your body is able to decompress. And so a lot comes up, and it's coming up in a context that is so outside of the environment you're used to being in that it's able to be viewed without bias or without the typical biases that generally stop you from developing kind of therapeutic insight into it. And then with the kind of waterfall of serotonin you're getting at the same time, it's usually able to be a lot more of a sensually positive experience, which provides a subconscious context that makes it a lot safer for your body and mind to kind of experience those suppressed energies or whatever it is, and allow it to all the way move through and kind of out, so that whatever imprint was left by that experience when it did happen prior to that moment, you're able to properly integrate and assimilate it so that your being can sort of evolve. And so it's like psilocybin, in a nutshell, lets your body catch up to its own process of evolution that's been stunted by the latest components of evolution, which is this self-aware kind of ego mechanism. And as that happens, the ego mechanism is also able to more fully integrate into the, subconscious, or you could say primitive conscious aspect of your body and mind. And so you become what is experienced as a being or creature of greater wholeness. And it's super fun. So you get really good at dancing. Your jokes go through the roof. Art becomes a little easier.
We have been microdosing for almost a year now, and I think for me the biggest benefit from it is I can't remember how you phrased it, but it's my ability to look at my emotional trauma and pain and just my shit, literally, right? Not literally my shit, but my metaphorical stuff that comes up. I'm able to look at it in such a easier, softer way. And so it doesn't feel as oppressive. I don't feel as much it's not that I don't feel a part of it, but I feel almost removed from it, so I can observe it rather than experience it.
Yeah, that reminds me, as I've microdosed, one of the really amazing experience that has facilitated was it was like I had this realization where I could make the decision to love and accept life as it is. And it kind of shifted this idea of love for me of it's all about love. You got to love life. You got to accept life. And that's the quote, the key and the answer. And I've had certain moments of seeing how, in a way, aligning yourself with that idea has to be a choice that is chosen irrationally, despite all logic in support of either direction. And I can't, again, compromise myself by saying, well, I love it because any reason whatsoever, because that immediately sets me up to fail when that reason isn't there, which it inevitably at some point won't be. And so it was this cool thing where, and who knows how much microdosing played a role, but it obviously did, to not just intellectually have that idea, but then to know how to kind of make the movement of perspective and almost energy to experience what that's like, and then to immediately feel and then watch the results unfold in a way that was really kind of magical, to see how it seemed like life immediately and overwhelmingly and ubiquitously responded with that same kind of irrational decision to display a kind of benign and active love both benign and active love back at me.
You were talking about the truth. Like if you hold on to this and you say, this is the cause, I love this because of this, then you're setting yourself up for failure in the sense, because it's not always going to be true.
Well, I think that, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're okay.
Oh, well, I would just say that instead of setting myself up for failure, it's an immediate failure, because I've locked myself into a conditional paradigm when I don't have to.
I can see that to a point. But that's also locking yourself into the fact that it has to be true always. Like what you're loving about it now can be true now, and it can change. So it's just because that's what you love about it right now doesn't mean that's what you have to always love about it. What it has to always provide. I don't see how it's locking yourself. I'm just not seeing that part where it locks it into immediate failure when it doesn't have to always be that. It can evolve into something different. Everything like changes.
Yeah, and I guess what I mean to say is that the thing itself changes. And so I have no need to provide any justification for why I love it because of the fact that it changes. And so if I just am opened in the sense of I can be an attitude of loving acceptance, and whatever the changing landscape before me is, there's no qualifier that needs to be satisfied in order for me to remain open. Mm-hmm. So I'm unconditionally open, and it's unnecessary to give a reason why, except maybe that I have up until this point learned that that's what I enjoy the most.
Let's see how that works for you. For me, it's less justification and more like gratitude, acknowledging, seeing the gifts, seeing the benefits, and being grateful for it, and allowing it to be whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, it is what it is, and who am I to change it?
So take us back to the Mogu bars, because what does it take to go from like this idea and trying to make something, whether it was in your kitchen or not, but trying to whip something up and then get it to the point where it's ready to go? Like, no, I don't even know how does that process start? What does that process look like? How do you go from the idea to market?
Yeah. It's one of those things where from the beginning, I've kind of held the position that it's the best of its category, whatever category it fits in, whether that's functional nutrition, mushroom nutrition, snack bars, whatever. There's nothing that's better. There's nothing that comes close, and it's obvious. And no matter how you're looking at it, whether it's from, you're reading what it's about, you're eating it and experiencing what it does to you. My position has been that because of this, all I need to do is get it out there, and if it's meant to be, it'll happen. And if not, I'll fail and try something else. And so what the process literally looked like in the kind of expression of that idea was that I was making it in my kitchen. I started with $40 that a friend gave me because they wanted me to make them some because they needed healthy, easy food. And so I made that with the money, and then was able to buy enough to make a little more. And I would just make it, sell it, buy more. And as I would go, I was able to kind of refine the recipe until I got to the point where I was offered a $5,000 loan to, expand a little bit, more. And with that money, I was able to get a working prototype, which is what I've been using for the last year, produced with, official packaging in a qualified facility where I could get it in stores should the opportunity arise. And with that prototype, and then the kind of the website and the interest I was able to just accumulate from that point forward, I was able to do a small round of fundraising that just ended a couple months ago. As you guys know, we're about to kind of produce the reformulated official version. And so it's been I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, there's a book called The Lean Startup. It was written by the founder, or one of the founders of Intuit, our friendly TurboTax umbrella company. Not so friendly. They have done some terrible things to our tax laws. But the book is great. They're really smart businessmen. And the lean startup model, the basic premise is you have your MVP, your minimum viable product, and all you need to do is define what your product is supposed to accomplish, come up with the minimum viable iteration of that, and give it to the market and let the market tell you how to refine and develop it from there. And if you are candid and clear in your communication with them, and you're not trying to deceive anyone, then you can develop this really cool relationship with the people that you're selling to, where because there's a clear and open and mutual understanding of the progression of the company and the product and where it's going, people will be willing to work with you and pay for your services, even though they're not yet to the point that you envision them to be. That prior to this kind of idea of how to do a startup, companies would fully develop a finished product and then market the hell out of it, try to convince people to try it, and then go from there. And that's the right way to do a lot of things, like cars, say. And then obviously there's a better way for other things. And so I followed that model because it allowed me to work, with tens of dollars and still create a company over time. And the fact that I've reached the point, or that we now, my team and I, have gotten to where we're at with an initial kind of injection of only $10,000 to get us here is pretty cool. But it's all just been kind of based on that lean startup philosophy, and also this idea of having this uncompromisingly great product that incorporates the highest level of everything that we know how to put into a package or a delivery mechanism like that to achieve the greatest possible result, which my intent with it is to provide cognitive enhancement and overall full body wellness. And so it targets micro macro nutrition, immune system function, adaptogenic support, obviously cognition, energy, and then the other really big one, the big number 2 to cognition, is inflammation. Inflammation being kind of the primary cause of most disease and illness. And so something that I kind of said to myself as I came up with this is that it's sort of my answer to what I see to be a world in need. And if there's anything I could do to have the greatest level of impact, it would be to provide better food for people that would help transform their biology and therefore consciousness in a way that is inescapably nourishing, regardless of who the person is and what they believe and what they're trying to do with their life. If they can feel better and be healthier, then my assumption is, as a direct result of that, no matter what they do, it will automatically be to a greater benefit to everyone else and be done in a way that's, you could say, more peaceful or good.
That's really beautiful. I like that side effect.
Yeah.
When is the new formulated bars going to be ready?
Monday. It was supposed to be last week, but there was a wildfire where in the town where our packaging is being printed, and so they had a little delay in shipping it over to us, and so it's happening on the 10th. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, Tennyson, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. Is there any other thing that you would like to say before we wrap up? Anything else you'd like to share? Or, we're going to obviously share like the website for the bars and everything like that in the show notes, as well as when the episode comes out. But
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, and I guess this will kind of come with what you guys will share, but just so everybody knows that listens to this, we're doing a lot of giveaways for the rest of January to kind of get the product out there so people can try it, a lot of big discounts. And I encourage anybody that hears this to give it a try, because my ongoing experience eating these every day for 3 years and out of everyone I've given to has been absolutely remarkable, to the point where, one example that's not unique and it isn't special, but I like to use it because it really kind of emphasizes the impact that this kind of nutrition can have on your life, especially that's so easily accessible as is made by the bar. But someone has replaced 10 years of daily Adderall use, cold turkey, with just taking a bar a day, with no side effects or like withdrawal side effects. It has like that level of power to help. And it tastes great. They're chocolate mints with like a cinnamon chai kind of undertone. So I say they taste like Christmas. And yeah, there's the plug. I'll leave.
I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, I couldn't do it if it's not something that I would have loved to eat every day and never get sick of. I wouldn't make it for anyone else. So yeah, it's got to be.
Oh, they sound great, man. It's been wonderful to get to know you a little bit, and I appreciate you sharing everything as openly and honestly as you did.
We got to get our hands on some.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I'll send you guys a couple boxes this next week. So I look forward to you trying them, yeah, and hearing what you think. And thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been a fun conversation.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.